Hi there, everybody, and welcome again to Talking True. I'm really, really happy that you're here, and I really appreciate you spending time with me and with my guest today. And on that note, my guest is a very special lady who I'm excited to have on to join me. Her name is, excuse me, Amanda Tweed. She's based in the UK. She is a non-dual teacher, and she has a YouTube channel where she gives clear pointings, and she also offers online courses and programs. So, Amanda, thank you so much for joining me. I'm really, really happy that you're here today.
Oh, thank you, Julie. It's a pleasure.
So, I would love for you to share how you got to where you are today, where you were and how you got to where you are today. I think that would be great to
Mm,
share.
yes. Um, where I was is, how can I put it? It's not as if I haven't told this story many times, but it was living in a place of addiction and in a place of, um, hmm, there was no, I'd always known that there was this force, this power called God. I just knew from a very, very young age. I knew I wasn't a body. I'd seen my body and I'm like, who made this? Where did this come from? So I was always very mystical and also very curious. And then when I got to my mid 20s, I went down the path of addiction. And it wasn't the path of addiction like most people that I met, where they couldn't cope with life or they wanted to escape. Mine was more like a hijack. So I'd met somebody and he was quite abusive and said, "You've got to take drugs." And I said, "No, no, 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 no. I don't need drugs." Um, but then, of course, that spiraled and went down, and I ended up taking drugs. And even in the drugs world, there was this knowing that this is not real. It's not real. Because in the middle of the drugs world, I remember meeting a lady and there was this, I call it energy. There was like bad energy between us because no matter what part of this lifetime that I talk about, I've never had the capacity to dislike another person, but I can certainly dislike the behaviors. And I used to get them confused. It was really conflicting because I thought, I can't hate you because I don't know what that feels like. I don't know how to do that, but I don't like what you're doing. And so it was very, very push and pull because I knew that there was a sense of innocence, but you're doing this. But I couldn't find the person to blame. So it was very, very toxic. And that's what I felt with this lady, that there's something that you're doing and I don't like it. And it wasn't said, we never spoke, but there was that sense of that disharmony. Anyway, cut a long story short, one day she collapsed and died, and there was many people that was around her. There was her brothers were there, and there was other people that were taking drugs because it was in a place of addiction. And I was there, and I'm waiting for my drugs because my body's in pain, and that's all I'm there for. And then, as if time stopped, and I don't even know what to say, but I just found that I was leaning over this lady, giving her the kiss of life very gently. There was no Amanda and an enemy, it was just an action being performed. And she came back to life, and I looked and I thought, okay, she's alive. And I sat down. And during that time, nobody in that room said anything. Nobody spoke. Nobody said a word. Nobody said, I thought you didn't like her. Well done. Nobody had an opinion. And it was never, ever, ever, ever spoken about. When she'd recovered, She came over and she said, thank you. And I just said, that's fine. But there was no, I did it, I helped. There was nothing. There was nothing. But that quote unquote bad energy, as if it never ever existed. And I had that quite a lot with females on that in that world, where there'd be an instant dislike for no reason, and then from nowhere there'd be this love that would just dissolve it as if it never happened. And I didn't know what it was. So, but through that path, I always wanted to know what the truth was. And I wanted to know who God was. I want to know who God is, and I want the truth. And I used to get, I don't know if it was visitation or if it was just the mind and I was imagining it, I don't know. But there was, I called him a genie, or there was some being that said, if you rub this genie, you can have what you want. What would you have? And I thought, oh, what would I have? So it's kind of like, I don't even know what to call that. I don't know. It was just a very strong mind activity. And I started naming all these things, a house, a car, somebody who loves me. And then I said, you know what? Scrap all of that. I want to know who God is first. Let me know who God is, and then those things will come. And this genie holder would say, no, 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 you can't know God. I said, well, take your genie then. I don't want to know. I just want the truth. And that was my mantra throughout addiction. I just want the truth. Who's God? I want to know who God is. I want to know who God is. I was also visited by an image. It was like a vision landed in the middle of addiction. And this image showed me a healed woman who was happy, who had that love, who had that career, who had that freedom. And I instantly fell in love with it. And I thought, oh my God, that's beautiful. But I never believed it, but I also didn't doubt it. It just came, innocently came. Of course, I carried on the path, and it was in 2010 when I'd gone into prison. It was the last prison sentence because I'd shoplifted to fund the addiction because I'd seen that as a victimless crime. I'm not hurting anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And to this day, I don't know where this woman come from. I have no idea. But there was a lady from Nigeria who was in the prison, but she didn't look like a prisoner. I could just see Jesus, but I didn't know who Jesus was. But it was just that is Jesus. And I watched her walk, and she didn't do anything extraordinary, but I just knew she had authority, and I was like, where is she getting that authority from? The prison guards would stand to attention. I was like, if that was anybody else, we'd be in trouble. Where? But she was so humble. Anyway, she moved into the same because it was a house. There were like houses where we lived in prison, and she lived two doors from me in the same building. And she just kept showing me love, and she'd say good morning, and we called her mum because she was a lot older than all of us, and she used to bring us gifts from the prison canteen. And on the day of discharge, I was having my hair straightened, and there was some hair on the floor. And she came and stood by the door, and she looked and she said, "Is that your hair?" And there was a knowing, and I thought, I know what you're going to do because I'd practiced, lots of different things. Clairvoyancy had come through, and all these things, and there was just a knowing that when you touch somebody's hair, it's a contact point, and there was just that knowing. But there was also the knowing that, yeah, you can take the hair because I know that you can't hurt me, and I know you don't have it in you to hurt me. Just knew that. And she'd collected my hair. And then when I went outside to say goodbye to all of the ladies, there was about 40 women that had come to say goodbye to me. And then they just parted. And I just saw this lady walking down the middle, and she hugged me and she touched me and she whispered in tongues. And I knew. said, that's tongues. Yeah, I'd never practiced anything to do with Christianity, never. The only encounter I'd had is when I was about aged between 16 and 18, and I had a dream, and this divine being who I just intuitively believed to be Jesus spoke to me in a language that sounds like tongues, but I knew what he was saying. And then when I responded to him, that same language came out of my mouth, but I knew what I was saying, and I was so happy. Happiness to another level. And so when this lady touched me, it took me there. I said, that's that language. That's that language. And I got on the train and I'm looking for the palms sweating and I'm looking for the anxiety because I've left prison. I'm going back to addiction and I couldn't find it. I said, Where's the addiction? Where? And it completely threw me. I just didn't know what happened. And so when I got back into Birmingham, I'd connected with a friend and I said, right, let's go and get some drugs. Even though there was no addiction, no pull, it was habit. So went off, took these drugs. And when I woke up the next morning, there was I've got to get out of this house. And there was nothing wrong there. The house was beautiful. It was clean. It was just, I've got to get out of this house. And during a conversation with this friend, um, he brought in another friend who was smoking drugs and he offered me some. And I wanted to say yes, but no came out of my mouth. And then I felt my body physically turned around to collect my handbag. And I thought, I've got to get out. I've got to get out of this house. So my friend took me to what's known as a supported accommodation. And as I walked in, there was another lady, another woman of God. And I could just feel power coming off this woman. And she'd shown me to my room. And I remember walking in my room, closing the door, looking around and saying, I won't do drugs in this room. Just came out. So I'd spent the day, I'd done some shopping and done some bits and pieces. I went to bed in the supported accommodation. And when I woke up the next morning, I was awake in Christ consciousness. Everything had fallen. It was just a sense of happiness, being present, awareness, knowing that if I have to put a word to it. And the astonishing thing is, I think it was 3 days I wasn't able to do anything. I just kept lying down, but it wasn't because of withdrawal symptoms, because there was a sort of a memory of addiction, but it didn't really mean anything. Um, but the body continued with its normal activities. And so there's a habit of shoplifting. And but there was no judgment, there was no opinion, there was no this is wrong, it must stop. There was nothing. There was just absolutely nothing. I'm not saying I'm making it right, but it had no rightfulness and no wrongfulness. I don't understand it. But it was obviously meant to be because in the middle of it, there was a sort of a shock. Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? It was like a coming to the senses. And I'd ran to Jesus and said, Jesus, I know that you took addiction away. I know it wasn't that lady who put her hands up, and I know it's not the woman that owns this hostel. I know it's you. And if you done that, then my God, surely you can stop me from lying and from stealing. And as soon as I'd said that prayer, I received a letter from one of the ladies that I'd met in prison who I promised to shoplift goods for because I just had a heart for this woman. She had nobody bringing her anything in. And so I thought, well, I'm a shoplifter, so I can steal her some stuff and, justify shoplifting again. And she'd sent me a letter. And I read the letter and I said, Jesus, I'm not sure who you are and where you are, but can you cancel that prayer because this lady needs some stuff and I've promised it to her. So I ran and I took a shower and I got dressed. And as I went to walk out the door, the conviction, I couldn't move. I said, oh my God, I can't steal. I said, prayers do not get answered that quickly. No way. No way, Hose. I just I couldn't move. So I ran back and sat on my bed trembling. And I had my eyes closed and I'm saying, what am I going to do for money? I'm not praying for money. I'm not, there's no greed, but what am I going to do? How am I going to live? How is this going to happen? Petrified. My eyes are closed. And the next thing you know, my bedroom door just swung open. In walked this amazing woman who owned a supported accommodation, who had grown to become my mentor. And she had some money and she said, Jesus said to give you this. And she gave me the money and she walked out. And I'm looking around the room. There's got to be CCTV. No, this is not real. This is not real. And then I said, so your name is Jesus and you are the provider. I said, that is it. That was it. I was, well, can I have this? And and I told him everything. And I need to tell you this. And I'd offloaded all the baggage, all the hurt of those years of addiction. And I cried. I didn't cry for forgiveness, but I was able to tell him the truth and be so honest but respectful. Mm-hmm. And it was that honesty. It was that truth. And the freedom that comes with honesty and truth is indescribable. Mm. So now I've got a relationship with Jesus. And within speaking to Jesus, I felt there was a presence that just covered the whole. I could feel my crown really being pressed on, but I knew it wasn't nothing to be scared of. And then I started praying in tongues and it just took off and I just couldn't stop. And I was like, I was scared at first because I didn't know. You don't have any control. Your mouth is just going and my body was shaking and the tongues and tongues. And then it was just miraculous, miraculous walk. Anything that I wanted, one idea, and it would be there. And I think the funniest thing was being a Christian, being born again. Sometimes we can follow the path of religion. It can be very, very close, and it's not a bad thing. Mm-hmm. You know, you've got to walk correctly. You must stop doing this. You must stop doing that. And if God chooses a man for you, he's going to bring you a Christian. He's not going to bring you. So it's just because of praying in tongues and being intuitive, I said, Jesus, I don't care what you do. All I want is you. And I prayed and I said, Lord, do I have a husband? Because my whole life, everything had healed. The body had healed. Everything just transformed. There was no longer, I couldn't find an addict anymore. I said, do I have a husband? And I heard him say, yes. I heard that internal yes. I said, brilliant. I said, but Jesus, just one more thing. Before you bring that man to me, make me please just this is the thing that I want above all things. Do not let anyone or anything come between me and you, because I know that I have the capacity to run off and forget you. I know that's in me because I just know it is. I don't understand it. But please, I need you to hold me. I need you to keep me. Please, please, please send the most amazing man. Send what you want, but please do not let that overtake me. Don't let it take my soul. Mm-hmm. And months went by and a police officer knocked on the door and I thought, you know, he didn't barge past me, but he was very short. And I remember thinking, what a rude man. And I thought nothing of it, you know. he'd come to see one of the service users that was living there, and he I waited by the front door. He popped in, spoke to this lady for 2 minutes, and then he went again. He said thank you, goodbye. And then a few months later, he'd come back, but he came back with some colleagues, and he told me that he liked me, and I was like, oh my God, I've been on the wrong side of the law. This is not going to work. And would Jesus really do this? Anyway, 12 years later, we're still together. And he always said to me that he said, I could see something in you. He said, but when I knew that you was a Christian, he said, that was it. I could see your love for God. He said, and that was it. And um, he he was raised Catholic, and there's Amanda who's Christian, and there's a landlord who's Muslim, and his business partner is Hindu. But to Amanda, the only religion I'm interested in is love. It's just a identity, and it's innocent, and it's fine, and it doesn't need to change.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what this whole path has been about. The level of crime, the throwing all of my possessions away from the old life and just saying, that's it, I'm done. I'm fully in, both feet. Do what you want, God. You know, it was that level of commitment. And it was a beautiful, mystical, majestic walk where I would speak to Jesus in the morning. I would ask his opinion on things. When it comes to having triggers, being triggered by other beings, this is Amanda's version, there would be Jesus's words would come forgiveness. And I'd say, listen, Jesus, you're asking me to do something I don't know how to do. I don't know how to forgive them. I haven't got a clue. So I was never clever, you know, I was never trying to please God. I was just very honest. I don't know how to do it. But if you know, I don't want to not please you, but I don't want to try to please you because that's going to be false. So I would be there cleaning myself in language and just bringing it back to honesty, honesty. And 9 times out of 10, I would just feel this wash of love that I felt when I was an addict and I didn't like someone, that would just show up. And the two people that were enemies would just melt in love. So I wasn't able to hold enemies. It just wouldn't happen. Um, and this went on for many years. And then in 2016, lots of things have come, you know, moving into a home with no money, not having any money, and Jesus saying, that's your home, take it. That's your car, go and drive it. And it was just crazy. But I wasn't really focused on the materialistic things, but they were nice when they came. But I always said, Jesus, you have to be, if nothing means anything without you. And one day I'm sat and I'm eating a meal and I'm watching TV and everything's fine, no problem. No problem at all. No prayer to be answered, no missing anything, nothing, just normal. And as I got into the kitchen from nowhere, this cry came up and I started shouting at God. I said, I don't understand you. I need to know who you are. This pain of separation, it just come from nowhere. It wasn't a prolonged pain. It just happened. I said, Jesus, I need to know who you are. I can't stand this separation. I don't know why you love me so much. I need to know who I am. What do you see in me? What is it? What is it? And as if by magic, the lady who was running the supported accommodation, who had become my spiritual mentor, he'd sent me a YouTube video of a man called Muji. And I looked and thought, why is she? Does she not know I'm in the middle of prayer? I'm in pain, and she's sending me this. Anyway, there's a little bit of anger. I was like, oh, I can't, I just want to know who Jesus is. Anyway, I clicked on this Muji video, and that was it. I knew. I said, I've opened a can of worms. I know he's talking the truth. I don't like it. but I know it's the truth. And shortly after that, I abandoned everything. I abandoned my job. I didn't care. I didn't care. I had no fear of homelessness, no fear. I just didn't care. I said, I just want my father. I just want to know who you are. And if I find out who I am in the process, that's a bonus. But then anybody that sits in front of one of Moody's direct inquiries, everything gets swallowed up. And so for 4 weeks, I remained at home. I didn't move. I just sat at home for 4 weeks. By then, I was a dance fitness instructor. I taught Zumba, and that was, I think it was 2, 3 times a week. So it was a break. I would go out to a Zumba session, come back, have a shower, have food, back in the presence of Muji, constantly, constantly doing self inquiry. Was I born? Can I die? Am I a body? Who is God? Constant, constant, constant. And then from nowhere, an opportunity came in. Somebody needed a support worker to go and do what I'd been trained to do. And it was working with people that had mental health. And whenever I felt a challenge come up, there and then, I've got no time for a quiet place. There and then, even if it was in the middle of the street, I would say, who is suffering this? And I would close my eyes and I would experience the answer. There's no sufferer. I would open my eyes and say, right, you can continue talking if you want. And people just accepted that, all of these people that had these mental health conditions, schizophrenia, personality disorders, psychosis, they all healed because I didn't hold those illnesses to them because all I can see is Jesus. I can just see perfection. And I didn't, they
So
could.
can I just stop you there? I mean, this is the most incredible story. Can I just stop you there, just for viewers as well? So did you make that statement out loud with the people that were coming to you? You would ask them, who is suffering? Is that what you?
I did it to
Or you?
myself. I
Oh,
just
okay. Just wondered. Okay.
closed everything down. So if, say, for example, you and I are talking and the conversation's getting quite challenging and I can feel myself getting pulled in, I would stop and say, who's suffering? And I'd be asking me, who is suffering? And then I'd realize there's no suffering. And I would go back and say, sorry, Julie, what did you? So it's as if I just
Yes.
withdraw.
Yes. Get it. And
Yes.
so really, the transmission, so to speak, of that question would affect the person you're speaking to. That's absolutely that's gold. For anybody who's listening, and especially for anybody who's in a helping or healing profession, right?
It's a case of having no shame. It's a case of having no wanting approval. I don't want to behave well in front of people. I want the truth. I
Yes.
just
Yes.
want the truth about this. Just give me the truth.
Truth. Yes.
Give me the truth. So who
Yes.
is suffering this? And I would experience it. And I would say, but are there any problems then? Because this is what's being presented, a problematic situation. So I can get drawn into that. And I'd say, but hold on, are there any problems? I remember Muji's questions. I'd say, are there any problems? I'd be like, no, there's no problems. And I don't know what that person's doing in front of me, whether they carry on talking. I have no idea, but I would then be back present in the
Yeah.
story. And the story, it's changed before I'm like, oh, so come on, let's do this then. And it would never get mentioned. um, but it was effective because I don't know, there was such a presence, there was so much peace, so much clarity, and people were allowed. If somebody stood there firm and said, I have got depression and this is what I'm going to do, there was no judgment. It was just liberation.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever was supposed to happen or not happen would just happen from here. But whatever it was, they all moved on last year, and I made myself unemployed. There was nobody to look after. It just happened. They went back to their family, to living without that condition and without those limitations.
Wow, that's incredible.
Mm.
And so this was, what was this, 2017 or 18? This was happening, or later?
This went on. So the call to God was 2016, and that profession went on until 2023. So I
Okay.
was in that field for quite a while, and it was very, very interesting. Very interesting. Mm.
Yeah. So what was the kind of the mm, jumping off point, or the final kind of recognition, or what, however you want to phrase that, the real kind of waking up moments? Was it a sentence for you, or was it an experience? What did that look like?
It was so. Yes, I have jumped, haven't I? So while I'm doing this direct inquiry with Muji, I've also come to hear about Eckhart Tolle and Rupert Spira. So now I've become a YouTube seeker, and I'm like, oh, all this exciting stuff. So
Yes.
through Rupert Spira, I'd experienced unity consciousness. So he does something called yoga meditation. I'd done it twice and I couldn't find the body. I was like, okay, everything's going, just moving. Um, Eckhart Tolle, I was a little bit confused about this thing called the pain body because I couldn't really pick it up. But his words were soothing, and it was moody, so it was bouncing between the three teachers. And then on top of that, of course, there was always Dr. Miles Monroe, the Christian path. That so it was like there was the Christian path of the love of God, and there was also the Bible, and then there was direct inquiry into self-realization. So it's a bit of a cocktail, everything's here, but it synchronized, it all felt well. And, there was moments when I felt completely separate, and then I felt oneness, and then I knew who I was, and then I didn't. And then I was like, Jesus, are you even real now? I can feel you, but I can't. So there was a lot of in and out, a lot of dancing. And I think the final liberation was when I thought The Greatest Secrets. I thought the book The Greatest Secrets, and I'd read it, and the mind fell. And I was just stunned when I'd read, the body doesn't know you. It was as if that truth landed from Muji's, you're not the body, you're not the body, am I the body? It was a mantra, am I? And I was experiencing being this without the body, without the mind, but it hadn't been embodied. It was getting integrated. And so when I read that in the book, I was just stunned. I had no words. It was, nothing to say. And through that book, I then went and got the audio book, and I'd heard of, you hear the teachers' voices. And there was a teacher called David Bingham. And I just, this man sounds, no, he sounds very, very ordinary, yet very, just something about him. So I'd started watching videos on David Bingham, and I'd also been introduced to the workings of Lester Levingston. So I did the Sedona method, and that helped immensely with cleaning up some old patterns and, playing with emotions and, that sort of stuff.
Mhm.
So when I'd heard, no, there was something that happened. Oh, right. On Valentine's Day, there was a falling of the mind, complete falling away of the mind, complete smashing of the paradigm, left with, I don't know who I am, all habits. I couldn't pick up any habits. If I tried to pick up a habit, I'd fall over. I didn't know how to clean a toilet. I didn't know how to do anything, completely useless. And then I watched as it reconstructed with leadership. That took a while to be embodied, because it was simply waking up and not knowing anything. I don't know anything. And
Mm-hmm.
it was sort of like that had come back, the Jesus and Amanda, but it was experienced in oneness. There was no longer a separation. The way Jesus says, I am the tree and ye are the branches, that was direct,
Mm-hmm.
absolute direct, that yes, tree, branch, one thing, two aspects. So it was more of the prayer life now has become predominant. There's self realization. Yeah, I know who I am. I know who I am not. It, it's kind of been integrated. But what is really happening now is the prayer life has been reborn. And so that prayer life, I knew that I could do nothing without. I just knew I could do nothing without the presence of God. So I've got the presence of God, but it's not separate from who I believe I am. It was very paradoxical. It was very, I don't want to say dual because there was no sense of separation. So I'd had this leadership that was downloaded. And then I was watching David Bingham in May, I think, 2022. And I just reached out to him. I just thought I'm going to send him an email. It just come from nowhere. And I met with David, and then I did a video with him, and that was it. I could see clearly that there's is effortless. There's an awareness of everything. Everything that exists is in awareness, and it's just resting as that effortless thing.
Yes. And not seeking anything outside of that,
Yeah.
which is it's an incredible relief to put that down.
Oh my God. Yes.
That's an understatement, right? You know, I'm saying that from the perspective of somebody that was a spiritual seeker for close to 30 years, you know.
Yeah,
And
because you're moving away from the beingness and you're looking for the beingness. So it's like, I mean, I've had lots of experiences with seeking. It felt like there's this energy that is experienced in the body that's called me. The me goes out looking for trouble. It wants to fix you, and you must be okay for me to be right. And I was watching that, and I said, "Oh, that's interesting." So that is that what we're seeking? But it all just collapses anyway when the seeking really stops. It
yes,
collapses. Yes.
yes, yeah. You know, and the thing that I've seen with often with people that I've worked with is there's this really, really hard ingrained belief that it's the
Mm-hmm.
person and the personal story, so to speak, that if you seek long and hard enough, you're going to attain enlightenment or self-realization or whatever you want to call it, right? There's that real belief that it's the embodied person, the story that is going to somehow arrive at the promised land and then land in this improved version of who they believe themselves to be. And of course, that couldn't be further from the truth. You know, if I keep doing work on the inner child, or if I open the chakras, or, you know, whatever the story is, right? If I do another retreat or read another program or do another, whatever it is, there's this idea that you'll get to this kind of promised land and you'll be like more vibrant and bright and you'll be enlightened and all the rest of it. And of course, it's much, much, much simpler than that. It's so simple. It's laughable when you actually see it, when you actually really see it and embody it. You just go, oh my gosh, it was so obvious from the beginning, but somehow you just keep missing. Well, I did, you know. You just keep missing this in your words, effortless awareness that arises, is always here, and is continuous. You know, it's not like it comes and goes. And I remember soon after, I had kind of a wake up sentence when I was listening to Muji in 2016 or 17, whenever it was, which was recognition of the self is the self, honor that recognition. And I just had this huge shift in which I clearly saw that the space that I was recognizing truth from, in the words of great beings or in their presence, was absolute awareness itself, or source itself, or whatever you want to call it, And I'd been constantly kind of diverting away from that and trying to find it in some other place, or feeling like I had to fix something to get there.
Yes.
And it had always been right here. So there was this collapsing. And then I remember the next day waking up and just kind of checking in. Is absolute awareness still here? Can it be seen? Can it be known? And of course it was. And then during the day, I'm busy, I'm teaching, I'm doing my thing. Even the craziness, is absolute awareness still here? And of course, yes, it was. And I realized, oh my gosh, it has always been here. It will never go. It can never go. It is who I am. It is self. And somehow I'd just been kind of missing that, looking someplace else.
We do, it's so innocent. We do it, don't we? Yeah, it's a spiritual roller coaster. Yeah,
That's exactly what happens. But it does, when you do wake up and you do see it. It is funny, and I think you can then, with dropping the seeking, it just makes life much more magical, more fun, more easeful. All of those things, all of the things we've always wanted,
yeah,
are
yeah.
actually always right here. We just somehow, don't see it, and this is a gift, the gift of grace, and the gift of our own self recognition, which is again always here.
And I know there are lots of different portals into this, and I've used most of them. I done breath work, so I would watch the breath, and I would notice that breathing is happening. There's not someone breathing. Oh my goodness! And I'd probably go really, I say really far, but they'd be into the nothingness, nothing, not even a question, no voice, nothing.
Yes.
Then you can come back into the full embodiment and really be present, and throughout all of that, it's to say, well, this is how I kind of embodied it and really understood it, is no matter what I was doing, whether it doesn't matter whether it was a spiritual exercise, whether it was talking to the neighbor, paying a bill, driving the car, I would say, is there an awareness of this? Yes, thank you. And it was the utterance of yes and thank you that give higher vibration. Not that I'm looking for a high vibration, because high and low are both seen in awareness, but the magical experiences, the favorable experiences, but knowing that even if they wasn't there, it wouldn't matter because there's awareness.
Yes.
Awareness.
Yes. That's a great practice, I think, for for anybody watching this.
Yes.
Just asking that question and just seeing, what happens.
What happens?
Fantastic. Yes. Fantastic. So I'd love to, I think we're coming close to the end of our time together, but before we head off, I'd love to invite you to share where people can find you and what you have on offer, because I think you have a new course, don't you? I think I saw.
Yes. So for the past, it's coming up for a year now, I've been sort of at home resting in presence. And what has naturally been coming up is programs and courses, which I never really wanted to do. I wanted to remain in that field of working in mental health because I found it really interesting. But what's coming up now is there are 28-day programs where I sit with beings every day, Monday to Friday, and meet them where they're at. And it is the direct seeing. It's wherever they feel that they're seeking or they want clarity, we look at it together. And I have that many different ways, teachings, pointings that I know. Well, it's not Amanda that's doing it. I think that's really important, is that that path of learning all of these things was like the teaching, the training ground, so that when beingness becomes established in its true nature, then it flows. It's a flowing through. And so that's a really popular program at the moment, a 28-day program. I'm currently working on a 12-week program with David Bingham. So I've spoken to David, and because he does do, he has a lot of one-on-ones where people recognize their true nature. It's also respecting that that needs to be integrated and embodied to have the full human experience.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been coming through on how I can work with David in offering that 12-week program. And then I have lots of other little programs that I do, and they are 12 weeks and 4 weeks. And it's really to meet people where they're at. So there's nothing set in stone. It's not like it's got to be this program. And no, they can be tailored, but they all have a foundation of effortless being. They all have that foundation of um, absolutely clearing out what is it that you want, what are you seeking for, what do you think will make you happy, and we
Mm-hmm.
take it from there.
Wonderful. So people can find you at amandatweed.com.
They can find me. I think the best place to find me is my YouTube channel, because my YouTube channel, if you go to my actual page, you will see all of the contacts there where I talk about my website, so I can receive an email through there. I also copied something of yours, Julie, which was really interesting. Your linked tree. I was like, oh, this is interesting. So I
Yes.
got that, and I was like, oh, what is this? And that's where I can advertise, and not so much advertise, but speak about the programs and the courses. So I think the best place for people to find me is my YouTube channel, because everything's there and it directs you to where you want to go. Yeah.
Yes, fantastic. Well, I'll also have all of that information in the show notes so people can just click and go. And, I'll include those things. So, yeah, just for ease. Excellent. Well, Amanda, thank you so, so much for joining me today. This has been really fantastic. I loved hearing your story and your process and everything, and just sharing from this space. It's exquisite. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure. Thank you.
And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. As always, I really appreciate you and I appreciate your time. And as always, again, if you enjoy this content, then please let other people know, especially people who are seeking to be free of suffering. So please subscribe and stay in touch and be well. And I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.